Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
Here is the essay, William Kingdon Clifford, a figure celebrated for his contributions to geometry and philosophical thought, kenned on the nature of things in themselves in 1878. This work, though concise, presents a compelling articulation of a mind-stuff theory, proposing that consciousness, or something akin to it, exists in even the simplest elements of the universe. This essay undertakes a detailed journey through Clifford's arguments, examining the structure and claims of his work, probing the foundations upon which his conclusions rest, and exploring the philosophical implications that arise from his unique perspective. The analysis seeks to provide a rigorous exploration of the work's specific content, situating it within the intellectual landscape of its time, and assessing its enduring influence on subsequent philosophical discussions. Section 1 Introductory Remarks and the Problem of Consciousness. Clifford initiates his exploration by addressing the significant challenge presented by consciousness. He observes that human beings possess subjective experiences, sensations, and thoughts that seem fundamentally different from the material world surrounding them. The primary difficulty, as Clifford frames it, lies in understanding how these subjective states arise from objective, physical processes. He sets the stage for a discussion that aims to bridge this perceived gap between the mental and physical realms. Clifford acknowledges the widely held view that consciousness is a product of highly organized matter, specifically the brain. However, he expresses dissatisfaction with explanations that simply attribute consciousness to complexity, without providing a deeper understanding of its origins. He seeks a more fundamental account, one that explains the presence of consciousness, not simply its contingent emergence in complex organisms. The essay then moves to consider the possibility that consciousness, in some rudimentary form, may be a more pervasive feature of the universe than commonly assumed. Section 2 Rejecting Cartesian Dualism and Embracing Monism. Clifford explicitly rejects Cartesian dualism, a doctrine that posits two distinct substances, mind and matter. He argues that such a separation creates insuperable difficulties in explaining their interaction. How can a wholly immaterial mind causally influence a material body, and vice versa? Clifford finds this interaction problematic and unconvincing. Instead, he advocates for a form of monism, the belief that reality is ultimately composed of a single substance. Within monism, he favours not materialism as then understood, which reduces everything to inert matter, to more nuanced purpose. He does not consider the claim that matter alone adequately accounts for the phenomena of consciousness. This leads him to suggesting a substance that possesses both physical and mental aspects, bridging the gap between objective reality and subjective experience. This proposed substance may be considered a precursor to later developments in neutral monism. Clifford avoids reducing mind to mere epiphenomenon. Epiphenomenalism proposes mental states are caused by physical states. Mental states cannot cause physical states. Section 3 The analogy of human action and physical processes. Clifford draws an analogy between human action and physical processes to support his monistic view. When a person performs an action, such as lifting a hand, it is preceded by a conscious intention or volition. This intention, though seemingly immaterial, initiates a series of physical events in the brain and nervous system that ultimately result in the hand being raised. Clifford suggests that, by analogy, physical processes in general may be accompanied by something akin to volition or sensation. Even at the most basic levels, he does not assert that every atom possesses full-blown consciousness comparable to that of a human being. Rather, he suggests it has a rudimentary form of sentience or awareness. This proto-consciousness, he argues, is an intrinsic property of matter, not something that emerges only under certain conditions. Clifford uses this analogy to challenge the assumption that matter is inherently inert and passive, devoid of any internal or subjective dimension. Section 4. The doctrine of mind stuff and its implications. Clifford introduces the concept of mind stuff to describe the fundamental substance that possesses both physical and mental qualities. He proposes that this mind stuff is the basic building block of reality, underlying all physical phenomena. The complexity of consciousness, as experienced by humans, arises from the combination and organization of vast amounts of this mind stuff. He compares it to how complex physical objects are composed of numerous atoms arranged in specific configurations. Clifford suggests that the human brain, with its intricate network of neurons, is a particularly complex arrangement of mind stuff, allowing for a high degree of consciousness. He postulates that the degree of consciousness is proportional to the complexity and organization of the underlying mind stuff. This implies that simpler entities, such as atoms, possess only a rudimentary form of consciousness, while more complex organisms possess a richer, more elaborate subjective experience. With this framework, Clifford attempts to explain the emergence of consciousness without resorting to dualism or epiphenomenalism. Matter is not solely material, but it possesses an intrinsic mental aspect. Section 5. Memory, habit, and the accumulation of mind stuff. Clifford addresses the phenomenon of memory and habit formation in terms of mind stuff. He proposes that repeated experiences leave traces or modifications in the arrangement of mind stuff within the brain. These traces, he argues, constitute the physical basis of memory, allowing past experiences to influence future behavior. He suggests that habit formation results from the strengthening of certain pathways or connections within the brain's mind stuff network. Repeated actions create more pronounced traces, making those actions more likely to occur in the future. Clifford also suggests heredity could reflect a transfer of mind stuff arrangements from parents to offspring. These inherited arrangements could predispose individuals to certain traits or behaviors. This concept offered a materialist explanation for heredity prior to the discovery of DNA, but it necessarily lacks precision. Clifford acknowledges that the exact mechanisms by which mind stuff stores, retrieves, and transmits information remain unknown. He believes that further scientific investigation will shed light on these processes. Section 6. Challenging traditional notions of causality. Clifford's mind stuff theory challenges traditional notions of causality. In the standard view, physical events are caused by other physical events, following deterministic laws. This is the common conception of causality in classical physics. However, Clifford suggests that mental events, or the internal aspects of mind stuff, also play a role in causation. He posits that the subjective experiences associated with mind stuff can influence its behavior, albeit in subtle ways. He does not propose that consciousness can override the laws of physics. Rather, he suggests that it adds an additional layer of complexity to the causal processes. This departs from a purely mechanistic view of the universe, allowing for the possibility that consciousness has some degree of agency or influence. It does not represent a full embrace of libertarian free will. Clifford acknowledges that the extent of this influence is likely limited, particularly in simpler entities. He maintains that mental events are intimately connected to physical events, forming a unified causal network. Section 7. The universal distribution of consciousness and ethical implications. Clifford extends his mind stuff theory to encompass the entire universe. He suggests that, if mind stuff is the fundamental building block of reality, it must be present everywhere, in varying degrees of complexity. This implies that even seemingly inanimate objects, such as rocks or planets, possess some minimal level of consciousness. He does not claim that these objects are self-aware or capable of complex thought. Rather, he suggests that they possess a rudimentary form of sentience, a basic capacity for feeling or awareness. This universal distribution of consciousness has significant ethical implications. Clifford argues that, if all things possess some degree of sentience, We have a moral obligation to treat them with respect and consideration. This goes beyond the traditional ethical framework. That framework primarily focuses on the treatment of conscious beings, such as humans and animals. Clifford's view implies that our ethical responsibilities extend to the entire universe, recognizing the inherent value of all things, regardless of their complexity or apparent lack of consciousness. Section 8. Criticism of materialism and idealism. Clifford critiques both materialism and idealism, the dominant philosophical perspectives of his time. He finds materialism inadequate because it reduces everything to inert matter, failing to account for the subjective experiences of consciousness. He argues that materialism cannot explain how consciousness arises from purely physical processes. It is simply asserted as a complex byproduct of matter rather than explained. He also critiques idealism, the view that reality is fundamentally mental or spiritual. He finds idealism unsatisfactory because it struggles to explain the objective, physical world. If everything is ultimately mental, how can we account for the apparent solidity and independence of material objects? Clifford proposes his mind stuff theory as a middle ground between these two extremes. He acknowledges the reality of both the physical and mental realms, arguing that they are two aspects of a single, underlying substance. He seeks to avoid the pitfalls of both materialism and idealism, offering a more comprehensive and balanced account of reality. Section 9. The nature of will and its relation to mind stuff. Clifford explores the nature of will and its connection to mind stuff. He defines will as the conscious effort to initiate or control an action. He considers will a fundamental aspect of consciousness, distinguishing it from mere sensation or perception. He suggests that will arises from the arrangement and interaction of mind stuff within the brain. The process of making a decision involves the activation of certain pathways or connections within the mind stuff network, leading to a particular course of action. Clifford acknowledges that the exact mechanisms by which will operate remain a mystery. He suggests that further scientific investigation will shed light on the neural correlates of will, revealing the specific processes in the brain that underlie conscious decision-making. He grapples with the question of free will, acknowledging the tension between the apparent freedom of our choices and the deterministic laws of physics. He suggests that consciousness adds an additional layer of complexity to the causal processes, allowing for a degree of agency within the framework of physical. Section 10. Clifford's panpsychism, a proto-scientific metaphysics. Clifford's theory can be described as a form of panpsychism, the view that all things possess some degree of consciousness or mental properties. However, it is important to note that Clifford presents his theory not as a purely speculative metaphysics, but as a proto-scientific hypothesis, grounded in observations and inferences from the physical world. He draws an analogy between human action and physical processes, suggesting that the subjective experiences associated with human action may be analogous to the internal aspects of matter. He uses this analogy to infer that matter possesses some degree of sentience. He acknowledges that his theory is speculative and requires further empirical support. He suggests that future scientific discoveries, particularly in the fields of neuroscience and physics, will either confirm or refute his hypothesis. He views his theory as a challenge to traditional scientific assumptions, encouraging scientists to consider the possibility that consciousness is a more fundamental and pervasive feature of the universe than commonly assumed. Section 11. The limits of knowledge and the importance of imagination. Clifford addresses the limits of human knowledge, emphasizing the importance of imagination in scientific inquiry. He acknowledges that our understanding of the universe is necessarily incomplete, limited by our sensory organs and cognitive abilities. He cautions against dogmatism and encourages a spirit of open-minded inquiry. He emphasizes the role of imagination in formulating new hypotheses and theories. He argues that scientific progress requires a willingness to think outside the box, to consider possibilities that may seem unconventional or even absurd. He sees imagination as a crucial tool for expanding our understanding of the universe, pushing the boundaries of knowledge. He advocates for a balanced approach, combining empirical observation with creative speculation. Section 12. Response to contemporary materialism. Clifford's theory directly engages with and provides a nuanced response to the dominant materialism prevalent during the late 19th century. The philosophical and scientific landscape was heavily influenced by deterministic and reductionist views, which often sidelined the role of consciousness or relegated it to a mere byproduct of complex physical processes. Clifford recognized the explanatory power of materialist accounts of the physical world, particularly the advancements in physics and biology that emphasized mechanistic explanations. However, he perceived a significant gap in these accounts, namely their inadequacy in addressing the subjective experience of consciousness. Clifford saw materialism as incomplete. He believed it failed to capture the richness and complexity of the human mind. By proposing a mind-stuff theory, Clifford sought to bridge this explanatory gap without abandoning the core tenets of scientific inquiry. He aimed to incorporate consciousness into a more comprehensive understanding of reality. Section 13. The enduring relevance of Clifford's ideas. Despite the scientific and philosophical developments that have occurred since Clifford's time, his ideas retain an enduring relevance. His mind-stuff theory, though not widely accepted in its original form, anticipates later developments in panpsychism and related philosophies of mind. Contemporary philosophers continue to grapple with the hard problem of consciousness, the challenge of explaining how subjective experience arises from physical processes. Clifford's insistence on the fundamental nature of consciousness, his rejection of dualism, and his emphasis on the interconnectedness of mind and matter resonate with current debates in philosophy of mind. Furthermore, Clifford's call for a more holistic and integrated view of reality, one that acknowledges the limitations of purely mechanistic explanations, remains relevant in an era characterized by increasing specialization and fragmentation of knowledge. His work encourages a broader perspective. It considers the ethical and philosophical implications of scientific advancements. Section 14. The role of experience in shaping reality. Clifford proposes that experience plays a fundamental role in shaping reality. He suggests that the accumulation of experiences, both individual and collective, influences the arrangement and organization of mind-stuff, shaping the physical world. He does not argue that experience can directly alter the laws of physics. Rather, he suggests that it can influence the complex interactions of matter, leading to emergent phenomena that could not be predicted from a purely mechanistic perspective. This view aligns with certain interpretations of quantum mechanics, which suggest that observation can influence the outcome of experiments. While Clifford did not anticipate the development of quantum mechanics, his emphasis on the role of experience foreshadows some of its more puzzling and counterintuitive aspects. It offers a potential bridge between the subjective realm of experience and the objective realm of physical reality. Section 15. Evaluating the evidence presented for mind-stuff. A critical examination of Clifford's theory necessitates an evaluation of the evidence he presents in support of mind-stuff. It is important to acknowledge that Clifford's arguments are largely based on inference and analogy, rather than direct empirical evidence. His analogy between human action and physical processes is suggestive, but it does not provide conclusive proof of the existence of mind-stuff. His reliance on introspection and subjective experience, while valuable, can be challenged on grounds of subjectivity and potential bias. He offers a philosophical framework for understanding consciousness. The evidence for mind-stuff remains indirect and circumstantial. Nevertheless, it is important to recognize that Clifford was writing during a period when the scientific understanding of the brain and consciousness was still in its early stages. He sought to formulate a theory that was consistent with the available evidence. He anticipated future scientific discoveries would shed light on the nature of consciousness and its relationship to matter. Section 16. The historical context and intellectual influences. Understanding Clifford's work requires situating it within its historical context and recognizing the intellectual influences that shaped his thought. Clifford was writing during a time of rapid scientific and technological advancement, when the authority of science was growing and traditional religious beliefs were being challenged. He was influenced by the empiricist tradition of British philosophy. He emphasized the importance of observation and experience as sources of knowledge. He was also influenced by the evolutionary theories of Charles Darwin. He believed that consciousness had evolved gradually over time. His ideas were shaped by the scientific and philosophical debates of his era. Section 17. Critiques and limitations of the theory. Clifford's mind-stuff theory is not without its limitations. One major critique centers on the vagueness of the concept of mind-stuff itself. It remains unclear what exactly mind-stuff is. The manner in which it interacts with matter remains largely unspecified. Critics have also questioned the explanatory power of the theory, arguing that it simply pushes the problem of consciousness one step further back, without actually solving it. What explains the emergence of consciousness from mindstuff, if mindstuff itself is not fully conscious? Clifford's theory relies on the idea that the complexity of mindstuff organization determines the degree of consciousness, but this raises further questions about the nature of complexity and its relationship to subjective experience. Despite these limitations, Clifford's theory represents a bold attempt. It is an attempt to reconcile the physical and mental realms. Section 18. The enduring legacy of Clifford's philosophical vision. William Kingdon Clifford's On the Nature of Things in Themselves represents a significant contribution to the philosophical discourse on consciousness and the mind-body problem. His mind-stuff theory, though speculative, offers a compelling vision of a universe in which consciousness is not an anomaly, but an intrinsic property of all things. His work challenges the limitations of traditional materialism and idealism. His emphasis on the interconnectedness of mind and matter resonates with contemporary philosophical and scientific perspectives. His philosophical vision continues to inspire and provoke new questions about the nature of reality. His intellectual legacy endures. In conclusion, Clifford's On the Nature of Things in Themselves stands as a testament to the power of speculative thought in addressing fundamental questions about existence. While specific claims may not withstand contemporary scrutiny, the work's enduring significance lies in its bold synthesis of scientific observation and philosophical inquiry. Clifford grappled with the hard problem of consciousness, offering a framework that continues to inspire debate and stimulate new avenues of exploration. The essay's systematic examination reveals a concerted effort to bridge the gap between the objective world of science and the subjective realm of experience, marking a pivotal moment in the ongoing quest to understand the nature of reality.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.